The stars had been quiet for a very long time. Admiral Torin stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the darkness outside. He was old now, even by the standards of his people. His blue skin had faded to gray at the edges. His large eyes, once bright with hope, now carried only fear. The Velans had ruled this part of the galaxy for 12,000 cycles. They were peaceful beings. They built great cities that floated on water. They wrote poetry and studied the movement of stars. They traded with other species and signed treaties of friendship. War was something they read about in old books. It was not something they understood, but the Kreth swarm did not care about peace. Torin watched the sensor screens as red dots multiplied across them. Each dot was a Kreth ship. Each ship carried thousands of creatures that existed only to consume. They had come from the edge of the galaxy, from the dark spaces between stars where no one had ever traveled. No one knew where they came from. No one knew what they wanted. They simply arrived, then everything died. 47 civilizations had fallen to the swarm. 47 species had been consumed. Their worlds left as empty husks. The Velans had watched from far away and felt sad. They had sent diplomats to speak with the Kreth. The diplomats never returned. Now, the swarm had come to Velan space. Admiral said his communications officer, a young female named Suri. Her voice was shaking. The Third Fleet is gone. All 17 ships destroyed. Torin closed his eyes. 17 ships. 4,000 crew members. Families who would never see their loved ones again. He had sent them to fight, knowing they would die. He had hoped they might slow the swarm down. They had not. How long until they reached the homeworld? He asked. 6 hours, Suri replied. Maybe less. 6 hours. That was all the time his people had left. 12,000 cycles of civilization, and it would end in 6 hours. Children were playing in the streets below. Parents were preparing evening meals. They did not know that death was coming. Torin did not have the heart to tell them. Sir Suri said, "There is one option we have not tried." Torin looked at her. "What option?" She pulled up an old file on her screen. The data was corrupted, fragmented by time. But some words were still readable. The old records speak of a sealed frequency, a channel that was locked 3 million years ago. Our ancestors left a warning never to use it. What warning? Suri read from the screen. Do not wake the sleepers. Torin felt something cold move through his body. He had heard stories about the sleepers when he was young. Every species in the galaxy had similar stories. They spoke of a race so powerful that the entire galaxy had begged them to stop. They spoke of warriors who never surrendered, who never retreated, who would chase their enemies to the ends of the universe. They spoke of a species that had agreed to sleep so that others could live in peace. No one remembered what they were called. No one remembered what they looked like. The records had been erased either by time or by choice. Only the warning remained. The sleepers are a myth, Torin said. Stories told to frighten children. Maybe, Suri replied, but we have nothing else. The swarm will destroy us. Our weapons cannot hurt them. Our ships cannot outrun them. If there is even a small chance that the stories are true, she did not finish. She did not need to. Torin looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the Kreth swarm was moving closer. Somewhere out there, his people were dying. And somewhere out there, in a system that had been marked as forbidden for 3 million years, something might be waiting. Send the signal, he said. Suri hesitated. Sir, the warning was very clear. Our ancestors feared these beings more than anything. What if we are making a terrible mistake? We are already dying, Torin replied. I would rather face a new danger than accept certain death. Send the signal. Tell them we need help. Tell them we are begging. Suri's hands moved across the controls. The sealed frequency opened for the first time in 3 million years. A simple message pulsed outward into the dark. It carried words of desperation, words of fear, words of hope. It traveled at the speed of light, passing through empty space, moving toward a small yellow star that no one had visited in living memory. Torin did not know if anything would answer. He did not know if the sleepers were real, but he had done everything he could do. Now he could only wait. Far across the galaxy, the signal reached a frozen moon orbiting a large planet. The moon was called Europa. It was covered in ice, and nothing seemed to live there. But beneath the ice, buried deep in the frozen crust, ancient machines began to wake. Lights flickered in tunnels that had been dark for millions of years. Computers that had been sleeping began to process data, and in a chamber filled with glass pods, something stirred. The pod was marked with strange symbols that no living being in the galaxy could read. Inside, a woman floated in blue liquid. She was small, with black hair and a face that looked peaceful in sleep. Frost covered her skin. Her heart had not beaten in 3 million years. Then the machines pumped warmth into her body. The liquid drained away. Her heart began to beat, slowly at first, then faster. Her eyes moved beneath their lids. Her name was Una. Once, long ago, she had been a commander. She had led fleets into battle. She had made decisions that changed the fate of worlds. Then she had agreed to sleep, along with all her people, so that the galaxy could know peace. Now something had woken her. Una opened her eyes. The world was blurry at first, filled with shapes and shadows. Then her vision cleared. She saw the inside of her pod, the frost on the glass, the dim lights flickering overhead. She heard sounds she had not heard in millions of years. Machines working. Alarms beeping. Voices calling out in confusion. She pushed against the glass, and it opened. Cold air rushed over her skin. She stepped out on legs that shook with weakness. Around her, other pods were opening. Other people were waking. Men and women who had been her friends, her soldiers, her family. They were all coming back to life. A screen on the wall showed a message. Una walked toward it and read the words that had traveled across the galaxy to reach her. Please help us. We are dying. The swarm is coming. We have nowhere else to turn. Please. Una read the message again. She did not know who had sent it. She did not know what the swarm was. But she understood fear. She understood desperation. She understood what it felt like to face death with no hope. She also understood what it meant to be human. Behind her, a man stepped out of his pod. He was tall and strong, with a hard face and cold eyes. His name was Tay, and he had been a colonel when humanity went to sleep. What happened? He asked. Why are we awake? Una pointed at the screen. Someone called for help. Tay read the message. His expression did not change. After 3 million years, they finally need us? Yes. What do we do? Una looked at the message one more time. Then she looked at her old friend. Her eyes were calm, but something burned behind them. Something that had not burned in a very long time. The answer, she said. The underground city beneath Europa was waking up. Lights turned on in corridors that had been dark for 3 million years. Machines hummed with power. Computers processed information that had been waiting since before the oldest civilizations in the galaxy were born. Una walked through the halls with Tay beside her. Around them, thousands of people were emerging from their sleep. They stumbled out of pods with confused eyes and weak bodies. Medical teams moved between them, checking vital signs and offering water. The process of waking so many people would take time, but the automated systems were working perfectly. Humanity had planned well before going to sleep. How many? Una asked. A woman approached them. She was shorter than Una, with kind eyes and quick hands. Her name was Mina, and she had been the chief scientist of the preservation fleet. The numbers are still coming in, she said. Europa alone has 50,000. Mars has 200,000 more. Earth has the rest. How many on Earth? Mina checked her datapad. 8 million, spread across 17 underground facilities. All pods are functioning. Everyone is waking up. 8 million humans. That was all that remained of a species that had once numbered in the billions. When they had chosen to sleep, they had decided to preserve only a small number. The rest had lived out their natural lives, and then humanity had faded from the galaxy. By choice. By necessity. Tay shook his head. 8 million to save a galaxy that feared us. Does anyone else find this funny? No, Una said. I find it sad. They reached a large room filled with screens and control panels. This was the command center, the heart of the Europa facility. An artificial intelligence had been managing the facility while humanity slept. Its name was Sol, and it spoke to them through speakers built into the walls. "Welcome back, Commander," Sol said. Its voice was calm and without emotion. "I have prepared a briefing on current galactic conditions." "Show me." The screens lit up with star maps and data streams. Una watched as Sol explained what had happened in the 3 million years since humanity went to sleep. New species had risen and fallen. Empires had formed and collapsed. Wars had been fought over worlds that humanity had never heard of. And through it all, the sealed frequencies had remained closed. No one had called for the sleepers until now. The distress signal originated from the Velen Collective, Sol explained. They are an amphibian species located in the Orion Arm. Population approximately 40 billion. Technology level advanced, but primarily focused on civilian applications. Military capability minimal? And the threat? Una asked. The Kreth swarm, a biomechanical species of unknown origin. They consume all organic matter in their path. They have destroyed 47 civilizations in the past 200 cycles. Current trajectory suggests the Velen homeworld will be consumed within 6 hours. Tay stepped forward. Can the Velens defend themselves? Negative. Their defense fleet has been destroyed. They have no remaining military assets capable of engaging the swarm. What about other species? Allies? Anyone who might help them? Sol paused. All nearby civilizations have refused to assist. The swarm is considered undefeatable. Standard galactic protocol is to evacuate civilian populations when possible and abandon systems targeted by the swarm. Una felt anger rise in her chest. 40 billion people were about to die, and no one would help them. The galaxy had grown comfortable in the millions of years since humanity had gone to sleep. They had forgotten what it meant to fight for something worth protecting. What are our assets? She asked. Sol displayed a new set of data. The United Earth Preservation Fleet consists of 7,000 combat vessels stored in deep space facilities. All vessels have been maintained by automated systems and are ready for deployment. Ground Forces number 3 million personnel across all facilities. Equipment is preserved and functional. 7,000 ships against a swarm that destroyed 47 civilizations, Tay said. Those are not good numbers. The Kreth have never fought humans, Una replied. They do not know what we can do. The door opened, and 2 more people entered the command center. The first was a man named Day, tall and lean with steady hands. He had been the best pilot in the fleet before the sleep. The second was a woman named Hannah, young and sharp, who had handled communications for the fleet command. We heard the briefing, Day said. When do we leave? Una looked at her old friends. They had all agreed to sleep together, knowing they might never wake up. They had given up everything so the galaxy could have peace. And now, without hesitation, they were ready to fight again, Sol Una said. How long to fully wake all personnel and prepare the fleet? Estimated time, 12 hours. We do not have 12 hours. The Valens will be dead by then. Correct. Una thought for a moment. How many ships can we have ready in 3 hours? Approximately 1,000 vessels. Crew requirements would be minimal if we use automated combat systems for support. 1,000 ships, Tay said. Against an enemy that destroyed entire civilizations with ease. Commander, I am not afraid to die, but I would prefer to die with a chance of winning. We will have a chance, Una said. The swarm has never lost, because no one has ever truly fought them. The other species run. They hide. They surrender. They try to negotiate with something that cannot be negotiated with. She turned to face her crew. Humans do not do those things. We never have. That is why the galaxy feared us. That is why they asked us to sleep. She walked to the center of the room. On the screen behind her, the star map showed the location of the Velen homeworld. Red dots surrounded it like a swarm of angry insects. We have a choice, she said. We can stay here and sleep again. We can tell ourselves that it is not our problem. We can let 40 billion people die and pretend we never heard their cry for help. Or we can do what humans have always done. We can answer the call. We can fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We can show the galaxy why they were right to fear us and why they were wrong to forget us. Silence filled the room. Then Tay stepped forward. I will follow you, Commander. As I always have, Mina nodded. Someone needs to study these Kreths. I will find their weaknesses. Day smiled. I have been sleeping for 3 million years. I could use some excitement. Hannah was already working at a console. I am preparing a message to broadcast when we arrive. The swarm should know who is coming for them. Yuna felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride, hope, love for the people who stood beside her. They were humans, and this was what humans did. They protected the weak. They fought the strong. They never gave up, even when the odds were impossible. Soul, she said, wake everyone. All facilities. All personnel. Tell them what has happened. Tell them what we are going to do. And begin launching the fleet. Understood, Commander. Fleet launch sequence initiated. Across the solar system, on moons and planets that had been silent for 3 million years, ships began to rise. They were black and angular, built for war. They carried weapons that the galaxy had forgotten. They carried soldiers who had never known defeat. And at the front of the fleet, Commander Yuna stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked out at the stars. We are coming, she said quietly. Hold on, we are coming. In the Velen system, Admiral Torin waited for death. He did not know that his call had been answered. He did not know that help was on the way. He only knew that he had done everything he could, and now all he could do was watch the red dots grow closer on his screen. But somewhere in the dark between stars, a fleet was moving, and humanity was awake. Admiral Torin stood on the observation deck of his ship and watched his world burn. The Kreth swarm had reached the outer colonies 3 hours ago. Now they were approaching the homeworld. Millions of his people had already died. Millions more would follow. The sky above his planet was filled with swarm ships. They moved like living things, twisting and changing shape as they descended. Each ship was made of flesh and metal combined in ways that no sane engineer would design. They did not follow the rules of normal space travel. They moved by instinct, by hunger, by a terrible purpose that no other species could understand. Admiral, said Suri, his communications officer. She was crying, but her voice was steady. The swarm has entered the atmosphere. They are landing in the capital. Torin closed his eyes. His wife was in the capital. His children. His grandchildren. They would all be consumed, their bodies broken down into raw materials to feed the swarm's endless growth. Is there any response to our distress signal? He asked. Nothing, sir. The sealed frequency remains silent. All the sleepers were a myth after all. Or perhaps they had heard the call and chosen not to answer. Torin could not blame them. Why would anyone risk their lives for strangers? Why would anyone fight against an enemy that could not be defeated? He was about to give the order to abandon ship when something strange happened. The space in front of his fleet began to tear. Torin had seen many things in his long life. He had witnessed stars being born. He had watched black holes consume entire systems. But he had never seen anything like this. It was as if the universe itself was being ripped open, creating doorways from nothing. What is happening? Suri whispered. Light poured through the tears in space. Then ships began to emerge. They were black, blacker than the void between stars. Their shapes were sharp and angular, covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. They were not beautiful like Velen ships. They were not elegant or graceful. They looked like they had been built for one purpose only: war. Admiral Suri said, her voice shaking. I am detecting 1,000 vessels emerging from fold space. Their energy signatures are... I have never seen anything like this. Our sensors cannot even classify them. The ships kept coming. 1,000 became 1,500. 1,500 became 2,000. They spread across the void in perfect formation, moving with a coordination that should have been impossible for so many vessels. Then, A voice spoke across all frequencies. This is Commander Yuna of the United Earth Preservation Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Torin could not speak. He could not move. He simply stared at the screen where a face had appeared. It was a human face, though he did not know that word yet. It belonged to a woman with black hair and calm eyes. She looked tired, as if she had just woken from a long sleep. But there was something in her eyes that made Torin's heart beat faster. Hope. "Who are you?" he finally managed to ask. "We are humanity," Yuna replied. "We were asked to sleep because we frightened the galaxy. But you called, and we remember what it means to protect the helpless. Admiral Torin, you are no longer alone." On the bridge of her flagship, Yuna watched the tactical display update with new information. The Kreth swarm was massive, much larger than she had expected. Millions of individual ships, ranging from small fighters to massive hive ships the size of moons. They moved together like one organism, controlled by a central intelligence that coordinated their every action. "Analysis complete," Sol reported. "The swarm outnumbers our fleet by approximately 500 to 1. Their ships regenerate damage in real time. They adapt to weapons after initial exposure. Standard military doctrine would recommend retreat." "Humans do not retreat," Tay said. He stood at the tactical station, already planning attack patterns. "What are their weaknesses?" "Unknown. No species has survived long enough to study them in detail." Day laughed from the pilot station. "Then we will be the first." "Commander, my wing is ready." "Give the order." Yuna looked at the screen where Admiral Torin's face still appeared. The old alien was crying, though she did not think he realized it. Behind him, through the viewports of his ship, she could see the Kreth descending on his planet. "Admiral," she said, "pull your remaining ships back. Get your people to safety. We will handle the swarm." "You cannot fight them," Torin said. "No one can fight them. They will destroy you, perhaps, but we are going to try." She turned to Hannah. "Open a channel to the swarm. All frequencies." Hannah worked at her station. "Channel open, Commander." Yuna spoke clearly, her voice carrying across space to the billions of Kreth that swarmed around the Velen homeworld. "This is Commander Yuna of humanity. You are attacking innocent people who have done you no harm. I am giving you one chance to leave. If you do not, we will destroy you." The swarm did not respond. It had never needed to respond. It simply continued its advance, confident in its power, certain of its victory. "They are not leaving," Tay observed. "I did not expect them to," Yuna said. "But I wanted them to know who killed them." She raised her hand. "All ships, engage." The human fleet moved forward. What happened next would be remembered by the Velons for thousands of years. They would write songs about it. They would build monuments to honor it. They would tell their children about the day when darkness covered their world, and light came from the stars to save them. The human ships fired energy weapons that no species in the galaxy had seen for 3 million years. Cut through the void. They struck the Kreth ships with terrible force, ripping through the biomechanical holes like paper. Explosions bloomed in the darkness, each one marking the death of thousands of swarm creatures. The Kreth tried to adapt. They shifted their formations, changed the composition of their armor, sent waves of smaller ships to overwhelm the human fleet. Nothing worked. Day led his fighter wing directly into the heart of a Kreth swarm cluster. His ship danced between enemy vessels, weapons firing in every direction. He flew like no pilot the swarm had ever encountered, predicting their movements before they made them, finding gaps in their formations that should not have existed. 300 kills, he reported calmly, moving to the next target. On the ground, human dropships were descending through the atmosphere. Soldiers in powered armor fell from the sky like meteors, landing in the middle of Kreth landing zones. Colonel Tay led the assault personally. "Push them back," he ordered. "Every street. Every building. Make them pay for every step." The Kreth had never faced ground combat like this. They were used to consuming defenseless populations, two overwhelming weak resistance with numbers. They were not prepared for soldiers who did not fear death, who advanced instead of retreating, who killed with terrifying efficiency. Mina watched the battle from the medical ship Compassion. She was analyzing every piece of data that came in, studying the Kreth with the intensity of a scientist who knew that knowledge was the ultimate weapon. "I am seeing patterns," she said to herself. "Their regeneration requires a specific protein. If I can disrupt it," her hands moved quickly over her console. "Yes, I can create something. A pathogen that targets only Kreth biology. It will take time, but it can be done." Above the planet, Una watched the battle unfold. The swarm was fighting harder now, throwing everything it had at the human fleet. But they were holding. More than holding. They were winning, Commander Sol reported. "Swarm losses have exceeded 30%. They are beginning to consolidate around the hive ships." "They are protecting something," Una said. "Something important." She studied the tactical display. There, the largest hive ship. That is where their overmind is located. The overmind. The intelligence that controls the swarm, kill it, and the rest will fall apart. She stood up from her command chair. "Prepare my personal shuttle. I am going to end this." Tay's voice came through the communication system. "Commander, that is suicide. Let me send a strike team. I need you on the ground, Colonel. The civilians need protection. I will handle the overmind myself, Una." Tay's voice was heavy with worry. "Be careful," Una smiled, though he could not see it. "I am always careful. Keep fighting, old friend. This will be over soon." Her shuttle launched from the flagship, cutting through the chaos of battle toward the heart of the swarm. Around her, Kreth ships tried to intercept, but human fighters protected her path, sacrificing themselves so she could reach her target. The largest hive ship loomed before her, a mountain of flesh and metal that pulsed with terrible life. Inside waited the creature that had destroyed 47 civilizations. It was about to meet its 48th, but this time, things would be different. Una's shuttle crashed through the outer membrane of the hive ship. The impact threw her against her harness, but she did not slow down. The shuttle's weapons fired automatically, clearing a path through the organic walls. Then she was out of the vehicle, moving through tunnels that pulsed like living veins. The interior of the hive ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. Walls of flesh stretched in every direction, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change. Strange liquids dripped from the ceiling. The air was thick with a smell that made her stomach turn. But she kept moving forward, following her scanner toward the center of the massive ship. Kreth defenders came for her. They were twisted creatures, part insect and part machine. Its claws that could cut through metal and mouths filled with needle-sharp teeth. They attacked in waves, screaming in frequencies that should have driven her mad. Why UNA killed them all. Her armor was equipped with weapons that humanity developed in darker times. When they had fought enemies far worse than the Kreth, energy blades extended from her arms. Projectile weapons fired from her shoulders. Shields absorbed impacts that would have destroyed normal soldiers. She moved through the hive ship like a force of nature, leaving destruction in her wake. Commander Sol's voice came through her communication system. "You are approaching the central chamber. The overmind is directly ahead. What can you tell me about it?" The overmind is a collective consciousness formed from the absorbed memories of every species the swarm has consumed. It has lived for approximately 50,000 years. It has never communicated with any species before consumption. "Until now," Una said. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber. It was easily a kilometer across, with walls that curved upward like the inside of an egg. In the center floated something that defied description. The overmind was not a single creature. It was a collection of bodies, merged together into one massive organism. Una could see traces of dozens of species in its form, each one absorbed and integrated into the whole. Eyes of different sizes and colors covered its surface. Mouths opened and closed in patterns that suggested communication. Tentacles stretched out in every direction, connecting to the walls of the chamber and through them to every Kreth in the swarm. So the overmind said, its voice was made of thousands of voices speaking at once. "You are the ones who sleep. Una stopped walking. You know about us? I know everything about every species I have consumed. Some of them remembered you. They whispered stories about creatures who were too dangerous, too relentless, too terrible to fight. They said you were sealed away so the galaxy could have peace. The Overmind's many mouths curved into what might have been a smile. I always wondered if you were real. We are real, Una said. And we are here to stop you. Stop me? The Overmind laughed. It was an awful sound. I have existed for 50,000 years. I have consumed more species than you can imagine. I have absorbed their knowledge, their technology, their very essence. I am everything they ever were, combined into one perfect being. What can one small human do against that? Una did not answer with words. She raised her weapon and fired. The blast struck the Overmind directly in its center mass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature screamed, and the entire hive ship shook with its pain. Outside, the battle was reaching its peak. Tay and his ground forces had pushed the Kreth out of the capital city, but more were coming. The sky was dark with enemy ships, and even human weapons could not kill them fast enough. We need something more, Tay said into his communication device. Mina, tell me you have good news. On the medical ship, Mina was working faster than she had ever worked in her life. Her hands moved across equipment that synthesized biological agents. Her eyes scanned data streams that would have confused anyone else. She was tired, hungry, and terrified. But she was also brilliant. The pathogen is ready, she said. It targets the protein that allows Kreth to regenerate. Without it, they will not be able to heal their wounds. Their bodies will fall apart. How do we deliver it? I have loaded it into dispersal missiles. But I need to hit the hive ships directly. The Overmind controls the swarm's biology. If we infect it, the pathogen will spread to every Kreth in the system. Day's voice cut into the conversation. I can get you close. My wing is battered, but we still have fight left in us. Do it, Tay ordered. All forces cover that medical ship. Nothing touches it. Battle shifted. Human ships formed a protective wall around the Compassion as it moved toward the hive ships. Kreth threw themselves at the formation, dying by the thousands, but they could not break through. Mina watched through the viewport as fighters exploded around her, their pilots sacrificing themselves so she could complete her mission. Inside the Overmind's chamber, Una was fighting for her life. The creature was more powerful than anything she had faced before. Its tentacles struck with terrible speed, breaking through her shields and scoring deep cuts in her armor. Its minds pressed against hers, trying to break her will, trying to consume her consciousness the way it had consumed so many others. But Una was human, and humans did not surrender. She fought back with everything she had. Her weapons carved pieces from the Overmind's body. Her will resisted its mental attacks. When her guns ran out of ammunition, she used her energy blades. When her blades lost power, she used her fists. Why do you fight? The Overmind asked. It sounded genuinely confused. You cannot win. You are one being against the collective might of 50,000 years. Even if you destroy this body, I will survive. I will rebuild. I will come for your people and consume them as I have consumed all others. No, Una said. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Her armor was cracked. Her vision was blurring, but her voice was steady. You will not. How can you be so certain? Because I am not alone. At that moment, Mina's missiles struck the hive ship. The pathogen spread through the Overmind's body like fire. It attacked the proteins that held the creature together, breaking down the bonds between its many parts. The Overmind screamed as pieces of itself began to fall away. What is this? It shrieked. What have you done? We did what humans always do, Una said. We found a way. Pathogens spread through the connection between the Overmind and the rest of the swarm. Across the system, Kreth ships began to die. Creatures that had been invincible moments before collapsed as their bodies lost the ability to regenerate. The wave of death spread outward, faster and faster, until the entire swarm was falling. On the ground, Tay watched as the Kreth attacking his position simply stopped moving. Their bodies dissolved into pools of organic matter. The sky cleared as enemy ships fell from the atmosphere, crashing into empty fields far from the cities they had been trying to destroy.
"What is over?" he said quietly.
We won. In the chamber at the heart of the dying hive ship, Una stood before the remains of the Overmind. The creature was still alive, but barely. Its many eyes focused on her with something that might have been fear. "You destroyed everything I built," it whispered. 50,000 years of evolution. 47 civilizations worth of knowledge. All gone. "You killed billions of innocent people," Una replied. "You consumed entire worlds without mercy. This is the consequence. You are monsters. Worse than anything I ever was." Una shook her head. "No, we are human. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight for those who have no one else to fight for them. And we do not forgive those who prey on the weak." She raised her blade one final time. "This is for everyone you ever killed." The blade fell. The Overmind died. And across the galaxy, the Kreth swarm vanished from existence. Una stood alone in the silent chamber for a long moment. Then she activated her communication device. "This is Commander Una. The Overmind is dead. The swarm is finished. All forces begin recovery operations." Oh, she heard cheering through the communication channel. Human voices. Velen voices. The sounds of people who had thought they were going to die. Discovering that they were going to live, she allowed herself a small smile. Then she began the long walk back to her shuttle. The battle was over. But there was still work to be done. 3 days had passed since the battle ended. The Velen homeworld was still burning in places, but the fires were being controlled. Medical teams from both species worked together to treat the wounded. Engineers began the long process of rebuilding what had been destroyed, and in every city that still stood. People looked up at the sky with wonder instead of fear. Una stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Her wounds had been treated, her armor repaired, but she felt tired in a way that went deeper than her body. Behind her, she heard footsteps approaching. Admiral Torrens stopped beside her. He looked different than he had during the battle. The fear in his eyes had been replaced by something else. Respect, perhaps? Or awe. "I still cannot believe you are real," he said. "For 3 million years, you were just a story. A myth. Something we told children to make them behave. And now, you are standing here, on my world, and the swarm is gone." "The swarm was dangerous," Una replied. "But it was not invincible. Nothing is invincible. To us, it was." Torren turned to look at the sky. Somewhere up there, the human fleet was still in orbit, watching over the planet. We had no weapons that could hurt them. We had no strategy that could stop them. When they came for us, all we could do was die. He paused. "Why did you help us? You did not know us. You owed us nothing. We were the ones who sealed you away. We were the ones who asked you to sleep." Una was quiet for a moment. Below her, she could see children playing in the streets. Velen children, with blue skin and large eyes, laughing as they chased each other through the rubble. They had come very close to dying. They did not seem to understand that. Children rarely did. "We helped because you asked," she said finally. "And because helping is what we are supposed to do." "I do not understand." Una turned to face him. "Before we went to sleep, we were a very different people. We were warriors, conquerors. We built empires that stretched across hundreds of worlds. We fought wars that destroyed entire civilizations. The galaxy was right to fear us, because we were terrible in our power. And then we looked at what we had become, and we did not like it. We saw that we were causing more harm than good. We saw that our presence made other species afraid to grow, afraid to develop, afraid to be themselves. So we made a choice. We would remove ourselves from the galaxy. We would sleep and let the universe move on without us." Torren shook his head. "That must have been a difficult decision. It was the hardest decision our species ever made. But it was the right one. For 3 million years, the galaxy had peace. New species rose and built their own civilizations. New ideas were born. New art was created. New friendships were formed. All of that happened because we were not there to interfere. But you came back. Yes. Yuna looked at the children again. Because peace means nothing if the innocent are left to die. We did not sleep so that the galaxy could be conquered by something worse than us. We slept so that life could flourish. When that life was threatened, we had a responsibility to protect it. A communication device on Yuna's belt chirped. She answered it and heard Tay's voice. Commander, the fleet is ready to depart. What are your orders? Yuna thought for a long moment. She looked at the Velen homeworld, at the cities that were being rebuilt, at the people who were beginning to smile again. She thought about all the other worlds in the galaxy, all the species who were living their lives in peace, never knowing how close they had come to extinction. Tell the fleet to prepare for fold space jump, she said. We are going home. Home. Tay sounded surprised. To Earth? Yes. Our work here is done. It is time to sleep again. There was a pause. Then Tay said, Understood, Commander. I will pass the order. Yuna turned back to Torin. The old admiral was staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. You are leaving? He asked. Yes. But you could stay. You could help us rebuild. You could protect us from future threats. You could. He stopped himself, as if realizing what he was saying. I am sorry. I have no right to ask you for anything more. Yuna smiled. It was a gentle smile, full of warmth and understanding. You have every right to ask. But we cannot stay. If we stay, we will become involved in your affairs. We will start making decisions for you. We will protect you so much that you will forget how to protect yourselves. And eventually, you will fear us again, just as your ancestors did. We would never. You would. It is natural. When one species is so much more powerful than another, fear is inevitable. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You do not need us, Admiral. You survived this crisis because you were brave enough to call for help. Now, you need to be brave enough to stand on your own. Torin was silent for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. I understand, he said. But what if something like the swarm comes again? What if we face another enemy we cannot defeat? Yuna reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a transmitter, old but still functional. She pressed it into Torin's hand.